Okay, good evening, everybody from Yerushalayim. Um, good afternoon, America. And we're finishing today with Parshas Mitzorah. Next week in Mirza Hashem, we'll let you know what the schedule is exactly. It could be that this year we'll be doing live from the yeshiva. We'll see, and it'll be posted up. Yesterday, if you remember, we were on Perak Yud Daled, Posuk Lamed Daled. And this was when the introduction to Torah says, this is the introduction to Mitzorah that comes onto the houses. And we had left off yesterday with a question, because Rashi brings down in Perak Yud Daled, Posuk Lamed Daled, where it says, V'nasati negad tzaras beveis eretz achuzastem. Rashi brings down the Medrash that the Canaanite nations, the Amoris were one of the Canaanite nations. They buried treasures in the houses. Just incidentally, the reason it's called Eretz Canaan, the land of Israel, was originally called Eretz Canaan, then it became Eretz Israel. But it was originally called Eretz Canaan, and the Canaanite nations, the Canaanite nations. The reason it's called Canaan, the word Canaan is related to the Hebrew word Hachna. Hachna means submission. And the land of Canaan is a land that lends itself to submission. The sources even say that when it came to immorality, the land which was the root or the source or the most immersed in immorality in the world was Egypt, Mitzrayim. Whereas the land that was most immersed and conducive for idol worship was the land of Canaan. Even though there was certainly a crossover, the Egyptians were certainly idol worshippers, and the Canaanites were certainly immoral. But everybody had their own unique talent, so to speak. So the Egyptians were the kings of immorality, and the Canaanites were the kings of idol worship. And the idea of the word Canaan comes from the word achna, which is submission. Submission means, and that's why one of the things of it's interesting phenomenon. Anybody who's ever come to Israel, if you go to near the area of the old city, especially within a radius of a square of a few square blocks, you find almost every religion in the world represented there. I got that. Besides Yiddishkeit, obviously lahavdil, you got Islam, and you got a Greek Orthodox and Russian Orthodox and Russian and Armenians. Every almost so many religions are found in Israel. Number one, number two, so many young people who have come to Israel and they've embraced Yiddishkeit coming to Israel, where they've been exposed to that. They may have never had any exposure whatsoever. And something happens when you come to Israel, because land of Canaan means it's a land that's conducive to submission. If people submit to the incorrect things, they submit to idol worship. Idol worship is a form of submission, of accepting somebody as something as as being above you. Baruch Hashem, we have made the correct choice, and we submit to the Ribono Shalom. But it's essentially a land of submission. That's why, as we mentioned a couple of maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, Eretz Yisrael is the famous question: is it a mitzvah to live in Israel? Is it a mitzvah to live in Israel? So, there's a discussion among the early commentaries, the Rishonim, about whether it's an absolute if it's mandatory or if it's an option. Rav Moshe Feinstein paskins that it's a mitzvah kiyumis. Mitzvah kiyumis means, based on the Rishonim, it's a mitzvah kiyumis means if a person lives in Israel, they're fulfilling a mitzvah. It's not an obligation. It's almost like probably a classic example would be shechting an animal. We make a bracha. There's a bracha that a person makes on shechita. Now, if you would ask any man coming out of shul, did you put on tefillin? Yes, he put on tefillin. Did you ask him, did you shech the cow today? Most men would tell you, no, I didn't shech the cow, and I don't have any plans on shechting the cow, not today or not any other day. So, because mitzvah of tefillin is a mitzvah, what's called mitzvah chiyuvis. It's mandatory. A person is obligated to put on tefillin. A man has to put on tefillin at least once every single day. Person does not have to go and shecht an animal. There's no mitzvah to shecht an animal. No obligation. But if a person shechts an animal, and shechts properly, says what's called a mitzvah kiyumis. So to live in Eretz Yisrael is not mandatory. But if you do live here, you're fulfilling a mitzvah. Should one live in Israel or not? That depends on many factors. The all contemporary Gedolim, almost as one, have said that a person should live in Israel if it is what's best for his overall growth, which involves many different factors, such as can he grow as a Jew in Eretz Yisrael? Does he have parnasa in Eretz Yisrael, which is a major factor in a person's growth? How is it going to affect his shalom bayis, is getting along with his spouse? How is it going to affect his children? Are his children going to blossom here? Maybe they'll blossom somewhere else. It's a very, very complicated in each situation. An individual would have to ask his own mentor or Rav to find out if that's the right thing for them at this time in their life right now. But when it comes to here, it's talking about they come to the land of Canaan and they're going to find these treasures. So we left off with the question yesterday. Well, why? It seems since the leprosy, the tsaras, the plague, comes to the house as an aveir, as a result, somebody's getting it's a consequence of the sin, and then generally the sin or the misbehavior, the misdeed is what's called sarasayin. A person is stingy, doesn't lend out his equipment. So it seems that chotein iskar, it seems that the person who has done the avera, so he benefits from it, whereas a good person doesn't have to have his house wrecked. So he's never going to find the treasures. So there are several approaches to answer that question. Approach number one is that the commentaries say, no, that others also got the marks on their walls, which necessitated the Kohen to come and determine whether or not the stones have to be removed or the house has to be dismantled. And even if they were innocent of the various averas that could cause it, they were also merit the treasures. It's just that a person, sometimes even the person who's a sinner, he may have other merits. There's nobody who only sins morning to night. You have people who, a person may not be the most biggest tzaddik in the world, but just because not the biggest tzaddik doesn't mean he doesn't do any mitzvahs. A man puts on tefillin, it's already a mitzvah. Man davens, a woman lights Shabbos candles, or a woman does a chesed in the house, or she feeds her husband a good supper. She's doing mitzvahs. Okay, so she speaks lashon hara. She's got flaws, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu pays for everything, and therefore, very often it could be that this person had certain merits, and he may have very big merits. He may have been a massive tzaddik, and he's got this one flaw that he's stingy. Okay, that happens. So for him, it comes as a punishment, but within the punishment is the reward that he will then find the treasure. So there are several lessons over here. Lesson number one is that if you look at the wording of the pasuk carefully, it says, "Ki savo el eretz Canaan," when you come to the land of Canaan, Asher ani nosein lochem lachuzah, which I, God, am giving you. V'nasati nega be'eretz eretz achuzaschem. And then I'm putting the plague on the house in the land of your land. So the lesson here is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is trying to emphasize, hey, listen, you know where your mistake is coming from? You know why you're a stingy person? Because you think it's all yours. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, first of all, let's get something clear. When you come to the land which I'm giving you, I'm giving you the land, it's not yours, the land is something that I'm giving you, number one. Number two, your problem is you see it as Beveis Eretz Achuzaschem. The end of the pasuk is you see it as your land. You see it as your, then the person gets selfish. It's all mine. So let's get something clear over here. I'm giving it to you. And your attitude should be that there's nothing that's yours. I'm giving it to you, and therefore you should feel that it's something that you should be willing to share with other people. You don't? Okay, so then I'll teach you. Here's a lesson that you should be a person who shares. Okay, now, furthermore, it's another lesson in life. And the lesson is, imagine this person. We have two types of people. We have a person who deserves the plague on the wall because it's retribution for the sins. You got another person who sees this discoloration. And they're upset, I lend out stuff. I'm a pretty generous guy. I don't, I'm never difficult with people. Why is this happening to me over here? And then the coin comes and a person sees, my goodness, they're starting to take out stones and eventually he might have to dismantle the house. And the next thing you know, he's got this treasure sitting under his house. And the lesson for us is obviously that everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is for the best. Kol ma de'ovid rachmana l'tav, whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for the best, as Rabbi Akiva said, which he learned from his Rebbe Nochum Ish Gamzu, who was the one who used to say Gamzu l'tova. Gamzu l'tova means that it's all for the best. Now, let's get that straight. What does that mean that it's all for the best? All for the best doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't hurt. That means if a person's stuck in traffic or a person's sitting in a dentist chair and he's getting drilled, that's, okay, he's got to get drilled. There must be something to some reason why he ended up at the dentist. There's got to be some benefit. And if the dentist runs out of Novocaine in the middle of the procedure, that's also a benefit. Now, the person has to know that obviously it's still going to hurt. Gamzul Tova, what it does is it takes some of the sting out of the pain, because the person realizes that it's not pointless. It wasn't pointless suffering. I think in life, take an example of a man who's trying to fix an electric appliance in the house. So a man spends 2 hours trying to fix an electric appliance. You know how these things work. You always end up with one extra bolt or one extra screw, which you can't figure out where that goes. And then you well, I guess it was extra. Then you kind of plug in this electric appliance, you knock out the electricity in the whole city. So it wasn't extra. But when a person spends 2 hours and then it works, okay, good. It was a productive 2 hours. One of the most frustrating things in life is to go spend 2 hours on the electric appliance, then you plug it in, it still doesn't work. So a person has to know that the pain is not pointless pain. There's a reason for it. More than that a person sees here clearly that something negative in life could end up with immediate positive results, that the person could see the positive results in front of his eyes. We don't always. We live on a certain amount of faith. We don't understand what brings certain unpleasantness to people. And we live with the faith that Gamzul Latova. It's a very difficult thing, very difficult level to really internalize it. The idea of making the bracha of Baruch Dayan HaEmes, nobody should ever have to make it, but making that bracha with the same level of simcha as a person makes a shehecheyanu, that a person realizes that it is truly for the best. Okay, we're talking about very, very high level over here. On the other hand, that a person should understand that something that looks unpleasant, a person may have his car breaks down in the middle of the highway, and he's all frustrated, and some yeshiva guy stops to help him fix his tire, and it starts raining, and this guy fixes his tire, and the guy's looking the whole time, says, "It's got to be perfect for my daughter. He's got such wonderful midos. He's willing to fix tires, and he doesn't get upset even though it's raining." And so something that started out as very negative, his daughter, who's been in shidduchim and has not found a husband yet, now he finds this young man who also happens to be extremely wealthy, and everybody lives happily ever after. So we don't know when what appears something negative is going to end up as something positive. Number one. Number two, there's a very famous another lesson I think that comes out over here. There's a famous Hasidic Maisa, an apocryphal tale. There's a poor man named Herschel who lives in Krakow, and Herschel is in his little hut. And, he's not very wealthy, and he has this recurring dream that that in Leningrad, under a bridge, there's a buried treasure. And he has the dream the first night. He's never been to Leningrad in his life. He lives in Krakow. And he has this dream that under the bridge, a certain bridge in Leningrad, there's a buried treasure. So he ignores it. And the next night he has a second dream, and again he has the same dream. There's a buried treasure under a bridge in Leningrad. All right, two doesn't mean anything. He has the same dream 3 nights in a row. So he says to his wife, "Listen, Sully, I've had this dream. There's a buried treasure. I have to go to Leningrad to get this treasure." She says, "You're out of your mind, Herschel. Dreams." The Gemara says we don't pay attention to it. He says, No, I got to go to Leningrad. I have to go to Leningrad. So convinces his wife. He hitches up the horse and wagon, takes some food, and he begins his long journey to Leningrad. And he gets to Leningrad, and it's as if he's lived there his entire life. Every single road and every single building, he saw them in his dream. And he goes and he follows the roads, and sure enough, there's the bridge. The only one problem: the bridge is teeming with Russian soldiers. Russian soldiers are all over the place, and he's worried he can't go to the bridge, to the spot where he's seeing the treasure, because these Russian soldiers are going to see him. So he's waiting around and he loiters there for a few hours, and this Russian captain comes over to him and says, "Listen, you've been loitering around here. What is it that you want?" So he figures, look, he's not a very creative, quick thinker. So he just figures the truth is the best thing. He says to this Russian captain, "Look, I've had a dream that there's a buried treasure under this bridge, and I've had this dream for 3 days in a row." And the captain rolls over with laughter. And he starts laughing, and he says, "What's so funny?" He says, "Well, I've had a dream that there's a Jew named Herschel in Krakow who has a treasure buried under his house. And I've had that dream for 3 days." And Herschel goes home, and he digs up under his house, and sure enough, there's buried treasure. So, the context of the story is to drive home a lesson that you have people searching all over the world. People are constantly searching for meaning, and searching for that. And the real Musar Haskell of the story is that the person, sometimes the treasure is right there under his house. A person doesn't have to go looking, doesn't have to go to Tibet and to go sit on a bed of nails. You don't have to go check into ashrams. You don't have to check around. A person is looking for meaning and religion and fulfillment in life. The treasure is right there in his backyard. And in Yiddishkeit, we've got it right here. And by extension, sometimes people are looking for, as opposed to a Ruchni treasure, some people are just looking for happiness or just some sort of entertainment, something to fill that void. The void is right here. We have the treasure right here. We've got a Yiddishkeit full of treasures. We have a treasure every week called Shabbos. We have treasures called family. We have treasures called devotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We don't have to go looking around for these treasures. That's the first lesson. So here the Torah, a person has something on his wall, you got treasure right under your house. And therefore, from every negative situation, then a person may find something. We know that there's something positive, and sometimes we see it more clearly than others. The halacha here is, and it's an interesting halacha. What happens is when the Kohen goes through this process, if the Kohen were to render the house tamei, and again we've mentioned that it's a psak, it's a halacha that the Kohen has to decide whether or not the house is tamei. Once the Kohen says the house is tamei, so then all utensils in the house become tamei. So the Torah says a very interesting thing, and we had mentioned this earlier as far as showing that saras is not some sort of physiological contagious disease. That in Pasuk it says, Uba asher lo habayis, the person who owns the house, in Pasuk Lamdei, the higid la kohen lemor, kinega nera li babayis. He comes to the Kohen and says, I have something that appears like a nega in my house. I have something that appears like a plague mark in my house. He doesn't say, I have a plague mark in my house. I've seen a plague mark. He has kinega. It appears like a plague mark. And Rashi points out, you don't say, you don't make the determination. You go and you ask the Kohen. And again, for us, a person who goes to a Rav to ask a Shiloh, we don't tell the Rav, I think my the hot spoon fell my milk spoon fell into a fleishik pot. It's treif. What do I do? We don't go we go and ask, what is the status here? And let the Rav pass it. So he goes to the Kohen and says, kinega. Now it appears like a nega. Is it or not? And he lets the Kohen make that determination. Number two, there's a concept called al tiftach pelosata. Al tiftach pelosata is we don't say negative things about ourselves. A person doesn't, for example, something you get a person who has ichveis, a person he has pain in his arm. He says, "Oh, I have a broken arm. I have to go to the doctor." We don't say that. A pain in the arm, that's a daddy's got. You have to go to the doctor, let the doctor determine. I'll tiftach pelo something. Person shouldn't project negative things that are going to happen. A person says, if he goes somewhere, he'll probably end up in a traffic accident. Person should never say something like that about himself. I'll tiftach pelo. So a person doesn't say, I have a nega. Say, kinega. That's what it looks like. It looks like a nega, but don't go and determine it. I'll tiftach pelo something. Number three, you'll notice that there seems to be the person could have said to the Kohen, instead of saying kinega nira liba bayis, he could have said to the Kohen, nega reisi babayis. Kinega reisi. I saw something that looks. He says kinega nira li babayis. It appears to me as a nega. And the commentaries point out that this is the person acknowledging li, that if this is happening or something, I have a flaw. And I'm coming to you, the Kohen, first pasuk in my house. But I suspect that what is going on has to do with the flaw that I have. I'm asking for guidance. So what does the Kohen do? In Pasuk Lamed Vav, V'tziva HaKohen, the Kohen gives the order, the command, Ufinu es habayis, they clear out the house. B'terem yavo HaKohen liros es hanega. They clear out the house before the Kohen inspects it. That means take out all the equipment, because if the Kohen comes in and inspects it, and he paskins that the house is tamei, everything in the house becomes tamei. Just about everything becomes tamei, without getting into the details of what yes and no base and the laws of tumah, which equipment, which not. But all this stuff is taken out of the house, so it doesn't become tamei, because some of it would then have to be destroyed, especially the pottery utensils. So the idea here is that the Torah is teaching us how concerned HaKadosh Baruch Hu is for us. You know how concerned HaKadosh Baruch Hu is for us? He says, listen, you're a no good, Nick. Your house has to be wrecked but I don't want it to cost you too much money. Even your pottery utensils, pottery generally the most inexpensive utensils, get them out of the house so it doesn't end up costing you more than it should. So in the lesson to this guy is, you know why this is happening? It's happening to you because you're stingy. It's happening to you because all you're doing is thinking about yourself. Look how HaKadosh Baruch Hu thinks about you. By, for example, Kaviyachol, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu thinks about others, even on minimal costs, even on something that's so cheap. He's concerned about your expense. So you, who are getting this punishment because of your selfishness and your tzara sign, you have to be concerned for others. Furthermore, there's a bit of a problem in this pasuk, which the commentaries point out, and you'll notice that at the very beginning of the pasuk, it says, "V'tziva hakohen upchinu es habayis b'terem b'terem yavo hakohen liros es hanega." I'm reading in pasuk 36. Before the kohen comes to see the nega, so that everything in the house doesn't become tummy. And then the pasuk concludes with, "Ve'achar kain," after everything's been removed, yavo hakohen liros es habayis, the kohen comes to see the house. So you notice that at the beginning of the pasuk it says that before the kohen comes to see the plague mark, and it concludes with, and then the kohen will come to see the house. So it starts with nega and it ends with bayis. Now it should be consistent. It says before he sees the nega, clear it out, then he'll come and see the nega. Or it should say before he comes to see the house, clear things out, then he'll come and see the house. But it doesn't say that. It starts with nega, starts with the kohen, he'll come to see the nega, then he'll go and he'll inspect the house. So there are two approaches to this answer. Approach number one is that the kohen's going to look at the nega. He's going to look at this plague because they have to determine halachically, does this constitute a tsaras plague mark or not? But before he looks at the tsaras plague mark, he has to look at the physical structure of the house, because the halacha is that not all houses qualify, even if the mark is clearly a tsaras type mark. The houses don't qualify for a tsaras halachic approach. For example, the house can't be round. The house has to have square walls and other qualifications of how the house is built. And therefore, the first thing the kohen has to do is look at the physical structure of the house. And if you look at the physical structure of the house, then you can become more specific and analyze the plague to see if that plague mark constitutes a mark of tsaras or not. Number one. Number two, I think that there's a bigger issue here. And that is that the kohen should see v'achar kain yavo hakohen liros es habayis. I don't think it just only means, certainly the plain meaning is the physical house, but I think that the kohen should look at the home. He's not looking at the house. He's looking at the home. What's the behavior in this home? What needs to be fixed up in this home? What's causing this? And therefore, the kohen goes and the kohen he analyzes to see what's happening. Now, even more, the kohen doesn't come immediately. He doesn't show up right away. The kohen waits until everything is cleared out. So the commentaries point out that the reason there's a delay in the kohen coming, besides giving a chance not only to get everything out of the house, is that a person has an opportunity to engage in tshuva and in tefillah. That a person should do some soul searching and do some introspection, and he should daven. And even to do tshuva, we need to daven for help from HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we should do full tshuva. And that a person should daven that things should get better before the kohen even comes. And the Gemara says in Sanhedrin, Le'olam yakdim adam tefillah l'tzara. A person should daven before a problem arrives in life. That means a person should daven to be healthy. Because if a person becomes unwell, then it requires the negative effect, so to speak, has been unleashed. It's easier to play defense, preventive defense, than to push something off once a person has been already attacked. To keep the problem at a distance is easier, so to speak, just to simplify things. So la'olam yakdim adam tefillah l'tzara means that a person should daven that he should be well. A person should daven, he should have parnasa, not wait until he's in a situation where he's strapped financially and then start davening. A person should daven that he or his children should find the shidduch. And a person should daven that he or his family should be well. A person should daven that his children should be able to get into yeshivas, not wait till his daughter has been rejected from a school to then start davening. Daven for everything in life that before the problem comes, and to daven in positive terms, not to say, please don't do this to me, Hashem. A person should daven in a positive way that will then have that potency. So it gives him a chance over here to daven before the Kohen even comes to the house. Because then after the Kohen comes up to the house, he's certainly going to need to daven. He's going to need daven for all sorts of things. And therefore, the Olam Yakti Baram Tefillah Tzara. Now, what does it mean to check the home? Kohen comes, let's check the home. So I think that over here we have a very common, something very common. I once heard a story about a guy. A guy's sitting and eating supper, and there's a knock at the door, and somebody comes. He's collecting money for an institution or some worthy need to come. A mishulach comes to the door. So this guy Yankel gets up and he walks over to the door. He opens up the door and invites the guy in, and he sits down with the guy 20 minutes. They discuss, and he writes him out a nice generous check, and the guy leaves. So after his leave, his wife says to him, Yankee, you were in the middle of supper. Why did you stop? You were in the middle of supper. She says to her, listen, there's a halacha that you're not allowed to stop and interrupt what you're doing in the middle of Kriya Shema. There's a halacha that you're not allowed to stop and interrupt what you're doing in the middle of Shemona Esrei. I don't know of any halacha that says you can't stop in the middle of supper to help a Jew and give him tzedakah. I don't know of any halacha that says that. So, sometimes there are people who will, in a very noble manner, they'll say something, we have a policy. We don't open the door during supper. We don't respond to a knock during supper. That's our policy. If your policy may be wrong. Change your policy. So it's almost like the guy who says, I once read a report that smoking is bad for the health, so I immediately quit reading. Right? You have a policy. Change your policy. Who says that your policy is not carved in stone? Your policy didn't come from Sinai. And therefore, a person has to know that sometimes we say, well, listen, this is our policy is we don't, and it's what? So that's your policy. So change your policy. A mother may say to her kids, I have a policy. I don't, I'm off duty between 8 and 10 at night. My children cannot speak to me between 8 and 10 at night. That's our policy. Our policy is you have to fend for yourself. Calling it a policy doesn't mean that it's the proper thing to do. And therefore, the Kohen comes in, what are your policies in your house? We have a policy. We don't lend out equipment. Because one time I lent out the drill and it came back and it was broken. Since then, we have a policy. Okay, listen, you lent out the drill. It's very nice. You want everybody in the world has to suffer because one guy broke your drill. That's your policy. My policy is I don't give tzedakah at all. Because I once gave a guy tzedakah and it turned out he was a fraud. You mean so all the legitimate people who need tzedakah shouldn't get tzedakah because of one fraud? Well, you call it a policy, so you call it a policy. So what? So change your policy. Change your policy. And therefore, the Kohen has to inspect, what kind of home is this? Now, there's a guy in a certain city, there's a shul, and they were making a kiddush one Shabbos because one of the members of the shul, he had a granddaughter. So they're making a kiddush in his backyard after davening. So the whole show walks over to this guy's backyard, beautiful simcha, and nice elaborate kiddush, with chalt and kugel and the whole works. And the Rabbi of the shul walks over to this guy, and he says, "Hey, Irv, mazel tov on your granddaughter. It's a beautiful simcha. I'm just wondering, I saw a sign on your front door. It says no solicitations. I'm just curious." Did you buy that sign in stone? Irv's a little shocked that the rabbis, he understands. The rabbi's not too pleased. Says, Rabbi, listen, we got guys knocking on our door all the time. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I can't. So I just put up a sign. No solicit. He says, I got a better idea. If you don't want solicitations, you don't want anybody coming to ask for tzedakah, so take the mezuzah off your front door. Just take off your mezuzah. Nobody knows it's a Jewish home. People, guys walk up and down the block looking. They see a mezuzah. They knock. Take off the mezuzah. Nobody will bother you. But Rabbi, I can't take off the mezuzah. It's an obligation in the Torah to have a mezuzah on the front door. It's also an obligation to give tzedakah and to do chesed. Get the sign off your door. So, a person says, how about it's my policy? We have a policy. Change your policy. That's what the Kohen's doing over here. The Kohen's coming over here, not just checking the negative, checking the home. What goes on in this home over here? Is this a home where people are loose with their tongues? Is it a home where people are generous, and so on and so forth? And therefore, that's what the Torah is trying to communicate over here. Now, if you skip on ahead to Pasuk Nun Aleph, Pasuk 51. So the Torah says, "V'lakach." Now this again is this procedure where he takes these, he dips he's got the birds and he's got the hyssop and the arrows, and then it says, "V'lakach" in Pasuk 51. "V'lakach es ha'itza ezov ha'erez v'es ha'ezov v'shtiat olas v'es ha'tzipar ha'chaya v'tova losam b'dam ha'tzipar ha'shchuta." He immerses them, he dips them in the blood. U'v'mayim ha'chaim v'hiza el habayis sheva pe'amim. He sprinkles it on the house 7 times. Now, where is it that he does the sprinkling? Where does he goes and he sprinkles the what do you call it? The blood on the house. That's pretty general. Which part of the house do you sprinkle this on? He's got to sprinkle. So Chazal say he sprinkles it on the mashkov. The mashkov is the lintel, the cross beam that goes. You have a doorway that goes up. Then you have a cross beam at the top. That's the mashkov. And the Kohen sprinkles with the blood on this mashkov, on the cross beam at the top of the door. And obviously nothing in the door is accidental. The symbolism is that from now on, this home, which has been a closed home, the Tzara Sayin, this is going to be an open home from now on, represented by this cross beam, which is at the entrance right at the front of the house. So the Kohen goes, sprinkles the blood right on the cross beam. That's where what's where it's done. Whereas by Metzora, by the way, it's sprinkled on his hand. The blood is sprinkled on his hand because he should use his hand, put his finger in his ears to not hear the Lashon Hara. Then the Torah concludes right towards the end of the parsha in Pasuk Nun Zayin. The end of this section. The Torah says, "Lehoros biyom hatomei uviyom hator," Pasuk 57. Zos Torah Satzaras. This is the law of the Tzaras. Then the Torah goes on to talk about a completely different subject, the topic of Zav, which is a person that has some sort of impurity that has escaped his or her body. But here we're talking about Tzaras, and the Torah sums it up in Pasuk 57. Lehoros biyom hatomei uviyom hator. Zos Torah Satzaras. This is the Torah of the Tzaras. This is the subject matter of Tzaras. So anytime there's a seeming redundancy in Torah, it's obviously there to teach us a lesson. What is it that it means when it says Zos Torah Satzaras? This is the Torah of the Tzaras. So before anything else, the Torah tells us, there's a rule. A Kohen who paskins the halacha, all the halachas, Kohanim were the halachic deciders, they were the teachers of Torah for the people. A Kohen could take the Torah, he could figure things out on his own, and he could paskin it. Here, the Torah says, can't do that. When it comes to Tzaras, the rules and the laws and the details and all of the so many intricate halachas that are interwoven here in this section of Tzaras on how to determine what color is it? Is it tamei? It's tahor, the discoloration. How big is it? Where is the placement, location? It's so complex that a Kohen is not allowed to do it, to read the book and figure it out on his own. He has to have Zos Torah Tzaras. He has to be taught the Torah of Tzaras from a Rabbi. Now, the way a person is taught nowadays in different areas of Yiddishkeit nowadays, in order to become a posek, in order for us to be able to qualify the paskin halachos, somebody has to do what we call shimush. Shimush means an apprenticeship. He has to spend time with an active rav or posek, and he has to see how this rav or posek actually paskins things. That's how a person learns to conduct a wedding. You have to spend time watching a rav, what he does at the wedding. You have to, I know of one rav who actually did it. He watched, he spent time, he was apprenticing to be a rav himself, and the big day came, and he eventually he was doing his first wedding. And he said that, he even had a little book that he followed all the instructions. And after the ceremony, he had this nagging feeling that he forgot something. That he'd hear the wedding ceremony. He was so proud of himself. He finally did it. He had a nagging feeling that it's just something he might have forgotten. And all of a sudden he realized that he forgot the part where the chassan gives the kala the ring and says "Harei mikudeshesli," essentially meaning they're not married. So he had to take two witnesses. They went into the yichud room, and the chassan had to take the ring and say "Harei mikudeshesli" because he had forgotten to do it at the wedding. How a person can forget that, I don't know, but that's what the Rav himself said. In any event, a person who wants to become a mohel has to spend time with another mohel, has to do an apprenticeship. Here the Torah is telling you that a person has to do shibush, he has to do apprenticeship with another Rav. Now, what that means is, and many Rabbanim, they may have more than one student who are with them, where they're training to be Rabbanim. So you have the Kohen who is qualified because he did shibush with the previous Kohen. And then he goes and inspects somebody who has saras. I haven't ever been in a situation where a doctor comes to examine a patient, and he's got a bunch of student doctors around him. And the doctor's pointing out with this human guinea pig. I says, well, what that means is that's a sign of this, that, the other. And, it's very humiliating to be used as the object, as the teacher. Obviously, they need to learn somehow. Somebody's got to do it, and somebody's got to be used. But it's very humiliating. I have a bunch of people in the room, all who are examining a person in what may be a compromised position. And it's very, very humiliating. Here's this Rav comes in with his Talmidim. And they're using this person who has the tzaras, they're using him as the object of learning and understanding it. There's a certain shame and humiliation, which the commentaries say, that's right. You shamed and humiliated somebody with your lashon hara, mida kedeged mida, you get this. Finally, there's another lesson here. With this we conclude, where it says, Zos Toras HaTzaras. This is the law of tzaras. And the commentaries say, the Torah is putting a limitation here. Don't go and create other areas of chumrah, of stringency, which the Torah didn't say. Sometimes the person says, ooh, look at this discoloration. The Torah talks about whitish discoloration and reddish discoloration and greenish discoloration, different shades of color. The guy says, let's see a person see the purple, brown, and orange discoloration. Oh, that's definitely tameh. No. Zos Toras HaTzaras. Stick with what the Torah teaches you. Right? Don't go overboard and be machmer. Now, there's a very important life lesson here. That a person sometimes, a person feels they'd rather err on the side of caution, so they're machmir. Well, if a person's machmir in one place, that may end up becoming a leniency somewhere else. Because a person may sap their ruchni energy by putting it into this area of unnecessary chumrah. And all that does is that creates a problem somewhere else. One classic example, there are many examples, one classic example, let's say a man decides he wants to be machmir and not use the Eruv, the local Eruv on Shabbos. There is grounds for that. I'm not talking about an Eruv that's controversial. I'm talking about an Eruv, which all the poskim have agreed is a good Eruv, and it's a valid Eruv. And this man decides that there is room for this in halacha. He decides he wants to be machmer and not carry in the local Eruv. And there's room for that under certain circumstances with guidance from a Rav, whether or not one should adopt that chumrah. This guy decides he wants to take on this chumrah. Okay, that's a beautiful thing, maybe. But what about his wife? And she has little children in the house, and now she doesn't have an Eruv. He won't be able to help his wife down the front stairs when she's got to manipulate a buggy with 2 babies in the buggy and 4 babies behind her. And this guy's he can't help. So he may be machmir, but his chumrah is now on somebody else's expense. So the Torah is teaching over here, don't go be machmir, and certainly don't be machmir out of doubt. Learn the halacha, learn what's permissible, and learn what's forbidden. And remember, the same God that forbids things is the same God that permits it. And we say even in halacha, when it comes to the stature of a posek, koach dehetera adiv. The greater the posek, the more leniencies he could paskin, because he understands the halacha and he can learn it deeper. It's always easy to just say usr. Usr is the easiest word to say. No, usr, forbidden. That we don't know, so we're worried. That's not our goal. Our goal is learn, study the halachas. And when you study the halachas, then a person will become a man. Then a person knows where he has to be machmer, where he doesn't have to be machmer. So here the Torah is telling you, Zos Toras HaTzaras. This is the law of the tzaras, and don't go any adding on other laws. And this is extremely important in the realm of Bali Chuvas, where that gray area comes up. And sometimes, you'll hear somebody will say something, well, it's secular music, it's usr. You have to know the parameters. If it's a woman singing, it's usher. If it's regular secular music and it's not suggestive lyrics, it's that gray area where, don't go making up halachas. It doesn't say it's usher. It may not be recommended. It may not be very, very refined. But don't go crossing lines and deciding it's usher. Usher is what halacha says is usher, not what we make up. And the Torah is telling us, listen, the Torah is meant to be upbeat. We're meant to be upbeat. And if we're going to simply oppress ourselves and start being machmer all over the place, that's going to end up causing a chumrah in another area, which is Yidus Hashem b'simcha, because we won't be able to serve Hashem with energy and joy because we feel that the Torah is too overwhelming for us. Therefore, before going and adopting chumras, a person should have a Rav, consult with the Rav, and everybody should have a wonderful Shabbos. Again, we'll see you on Sunday, Be'ezer Hashem, either from here, from Sameach, that yet to be announced. Good night, everybody.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, shkoyach. Okay, call to.
We'll be in touch.
Yeah, okay, bye.